everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. Today we're going to be diving back into the Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, and continuing our journey here in part number 3. So the first thing I want to make mention of, guys, is if you are not aware of the giveaway going on the channel currently, the Tainted Grail, the core pledge, as well as Lord of Hellas, the core box, is part of a bundle giveaway here in Rolling Solo, where all you have to be is just a subscriber of the channel, but be sure that you go through the link in the description below to ensure that you are fully connected into the giveaway so that I'm able to go ahead and choose a random winner. That's going to be super exciting to announce. We'll be announcing that winner a few days before the end of the Kickstarter so that the winner is aware of what they've won and they can adjust their pledge accordingly. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into part number 3. There's just one thing that I want to make mention of in terms of a correction. Then we're going to talk quickly about the decision you guys made in the last video in the comments section on whether or not we should help the bow maiden or leave her behind essentially for dead. So let's dive into it. Okay, this is a great catch by one of our viewers, and I wanted to thank that viewer specifically, so I put it in the pinned comment in the last video. But essentially, when we became exhausted in order to do the actions we wanted to do that particular day, that was the first time in the entire playthrough we become exhausted. Now, our character that we're playing has a weakness on the right side, just like every character does, has an innate weakness and strength. And our weakness is that we have festering wounds. It's a part of the story of our character. And basically, we'll lose a health when resting, when we're either hungry or exhausted. And we've never been hungry yet. We've always had something to eat during the night before the night turns into day. So we've never had to take a hit for that. But we have been exhausted once. And during that rest period, I did not take a damage or a wound essentially on my character because of the festering wounds. So at this particular time, I'm going to be knocking my health from 8 down to 7 to make up for that. That was the only error that was caught in the last video that would make a gameplay impact. So I want to be sure that we're playing this to the T. So we've dropped ourselves down by 1 health. And, you know, if things go well in this day coming, then maybe we'll end up getting that health back at the end of the day during our rest, if we're not exhausted. So at the very end of the last playthrough, I left it up to you guys to get back to me and let me know whether or not you think we should try to get the bow maiden back to the island asylum to aid her with the wounds that she has. A lot of you guys, actually it was very, very even in the end. There was a lot of you that said our character has literally no empathy, and you're correct. The entire time through this playthrough so far, he's just been absolutely vicious with everyone he's come across. So technically, I could see half of his brain wanting to turn around and say, forget you, I'm leaving you here and continuing on with my journey towards the 4 Dweller Mounds, which is just to the west of us. And that's kind of where I was heading originally until this bow maiden came out of nowhere and said, I need help. Now, the other part of my character's brain that I think is being tapped into a little bit is the fact that he likely is a bit greedy. He may have no empathy, but I'm pretty sure he's got a little bit of greed going on inside of him. And he's an aggressive character, first off. So he's probably got his mindset on a reward. So there's that kind of side to it as well. And I could see that through the comments as well. You guys were saying essentially, why don't we do this? I think he would do this regardless. He wouldn't care about the girl that he's trying to save necessarily based on his character makeup, but he may care about the reward at the end. That could be very true. This character is very aggressive. Maybe he's got a lot of pent-up issues. Who knows? I kind of want to play that through, and I'm also kind of curious to see what happens if we happen to get her back in time. You know that we set the counter to 2 in the last video, so we have 2 full days to get her back to the island asylum and then see what happens when we get there. And I've got a decent amount of movement and energy, or I should say energy to allow for movement. Plus, we have this really, really handy card that was also mentioned by one of the viewers as well. It's called Mead, and this card says, discard at the end of a day to use. During this rest, ignore the effects of exhaustion, terror, and the Howling Gale event. So essentially, I could push myself into exhaustion, which would give us a full 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of movement, essentially, or just energy in general, I guess is the best way to say it, but we'll use most of it for movement to get to the island asylum and almost be able to head all the way back. And then drink the meat at night, help us pass out, we forget everything we did, we take no damage, nothing bad happens. The cool thing about the mead is it's also going to stop the festering wounds from kicking in because, well, I guess if you're completely drunk, then maybe you don't actually feel pain. Kind of makes thematic sense. So I think it's a decent plan. I think we should try it. So we're going to go ahead with the very first round of this particular playthrough, trying to rescue the Bow Maiden. So starting off a brand new day, we need to tick down all of the dials that are in the game. And that even includes the dial we just got from the encounter, which has 2 days as our time frame to get her back. Because the way this states is it says turn all dials. So every dial in the game, every counter in the game goes down by 1 right now. So our counter for her goes down to 1 day. So we literally need to get a move on immediately. And then the Menhir here, we're going to tap this thing from 3 down to 2. So I just kind of have it on a 45-degree angle here, if you guys are noticing that. So, and it points just facing out. So we're at 2 with the current Menhir, and we're down to 1 with her, the Bow Maiden. Let's get her back to the Island Asylum as fast as possible. But first, let's pull our event card. So our event card for Act 1, Chapter 1, Part 3 is Signs and Omens. You recognize many constellations in the night sky. The Twin Warriors, the Seal and her cub, the Wench, and finally the Cup. It is said to have appeared in the sky when Arthur captured the Grail. It was always a symbol of hope for humans, but now you discover a star on its edge turned red, as if the cup was leaking blood. What foul omen is this? Your time is running out. This day you receive +1 free travel. So that's awesome. That actually works out perfect with our plan to try to get the Bow Maiden back to the Island Asylum, minus the fact the game's letting us know that our time is coming down to an end. I can see that the event deck, though, is still full. I didn't count the cards, what's left in there, but it looks like there's at least 8, maybe 10 left, something around those lines. And then it says, hint, sometimes you will stumble upon an encounter you just can't handle. Remember, knowing when to fight and when to run is an important skill for any adventure. And I mentioned this actually during our combat with a number of different enemies, that we don't always have to stick around and try to fight to prove something. Sometimes we're not going to be able to do it, or the risk of just staying around and battling and losing health is too great, and our mission is far, far superior to that goal. So, without further ado, how about we start moving through the actual day? Alright, so our day begins, the very first day of our playthrough here on this part number 3. So we're going to have our character move from the Hunter's Grove south to the Farmhold. The reason for that is if I move into that Farmhold location, it's my home. I don't have to pull a blue encounter card, which is a huge benefit. The other thing we want to make use of is the fact we got a +1 free travel, so we're going to be able to move ahead and travel here for nothing. Now, the thing that we have to remember is that we are technically carrying the Bow Maiden, and in that script that we read from the end of the last video, the Bow Maiden's going to increase our costs whenever we move, or increase our energy cost whenever we move by 1. So when we normally move it, it would cost 1, it's going to cost 2. So if it costs us nothing like it just did, it's still going to cost us 1 to carry her. So we're going to drop our energy from +1 to full, and we still technically have 4 more points of energy to spend in the safe zone, be able to have a good night's sleep and get it all back. But we also have 2 more extra if we want to exhaust ourselves. So we want to keep moving here. I don't want to stop. I would love to just do a free action here. Technically, this is a free action I could do once per day. So I could spend an energy to gain... but it does deplete my energy, which is kind of dicey, because what if I go into a gray encounter, let's say right here, and it ends up being super bad? That would be, in terms of energy expense. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to risk it just now. I think I'll wait. But let's move. Let's keep on moving. So we're going to head out of the Farmhold and head into the Charred Conclave. So this movement is going to cost us 2, 1 for ourselves and 1 for our Bow Maiden. So now off screen, I'm dropping myself down 2 more. So now we have 2 more spots of energy left to spend and safely, so that we can rest and get it all back. And then we have 2 exhausted positions to spend if we really need them. But we have to stop here because we've hit the lightning bolt. We don't have a settlement here, but we are going to have to draw a gray encounter card. So let's find out who we've run into. So we've run into a vagabond on the street here. So it says, living on the trail quickly teaches you to prey on the weaker. When you drop to 1 health, discard all your wealth and the encounter ends. So if we lose all of our health down to 1, they're going to literally steal all of our money from us, which we have 2 wealth right now, and that would not be good. I'd prefer not to lose that wealth. I need it in order to ignite another Menhir. So we don't want that to happen. Combat table's right there in front of you. It does lots of damage. If we happen to hit it for 3 or 4 damage, basically it's in our sequence total, it's going to run away. So if we want to hit it for big damage, we got to hit 5 or above, or we got to hit 2 or lower. That's really the only way we can have our sequence or our combat turns end without it running away. If we want to try to gain an experience point, a loot, which is a coin of wealth, and it looks like a common item as well. And when I say common item, I meant to say craftable item. That's what the C stands for. We even have a craftable item here with the battle horn, but we actually gained it. And craftable items are quite unique and very cool. They have their own set of rules, which we'll talk about later on. So I'm quite happy to go ahead and use my Old Steel Smasher on this individual. It's always giving me that extra point of damage, which gives me 1. My real hope here is that maybe if I get super lucky, I can combo it up and make a 5. A 5's not too terribly high. We'll see what we get here after I give this deck a shuffle here. So here we go. The first 3 cards that we get, we got a Defend card. It's only good if we want to defend and do nothing else for our turn. We got a Powerful Attack card. So this is worth 2, and it says receive a wound if last in the sequence when the enemy attacks. And then we have Outsmart. I don't think I've seen this one yet. I don't think we've gotten that one. This one uses practicality or magic to start it off, and has a preparation token which you can use, which means it delays that ability if it's in your sequence until the next following combat turn. But it would give you +2 value if fighting a green encounter. And we're not fighting a green encounter, so that's not as useful as I might like. So, it kind of ends up sticking me into kind of a tough corner as to whether or not I should mulligan and risk a mulligan or just work with what I got here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use Outsmart first. We're going to attach it at the practicality key there. It's going to give us 1 damage, so now we're at a total of 2 damage going into this, which isn't bad. So it'll end up hitting us for 2 back if we don't do something about it. But we also get a preparation token on this thing, meaning that this thing will sit, and I don't get this ability until the following combat round, but basically gives me a 2+ value for fighting a green encounter, which we already talked about. I am not, so I'm just doing this just to show you what would normally happen if I was fighting a green encounter. I would definitely put this token on. You still do it anyway to follow the game rules, but it's not going to give me any benefit in this fight, sadly. The other thing I have here is a Powerful Attack, but I don't think I have any way of actually attaching this one, and I probably don't want to because it'll put us in an awkward 4, and a 4 would put us into the runaway zone, so we don't want that. But Defend works perfectly, so I can tag this up and actually use it here on a number of different spots, but not magic because I don't want to spend the Q, or I don't want to have to spend the resource to use magic. Whereas I can easily attach it here. If there's a plus symbol, essentially what that's saying, if I haven't explained it before, is you can interchangeably do 1 or 2. So it's interesting that way. And this one up here basically is an even key. So I have aggression, so I have no problem linking those up. So this is my sequence so far, not bad. And as soon as I play this card, my turn ends. So my turn is ending right now, which means it goes over to the combat table of the enemy. The enemy is going to hit me based on what I've hit him, and I've hit him for 2, so he's going to hit me for 2, but then I put a card out for Defend to block that 2, so I don't take any damage, which is awesome, and we get to go into another round of fighting. All right, so we're going into a new round. I'm going to go ahead and take the preparation token off. I don't get the benefit at this point, which is too bad, but I do get to keep 1 card from my hand if I want. I'm going to keep the Powerful Attack one because that might actually give me enough strength to do some serious damage going to the next one. So here's one. Final Blow. That sounds like a great card to have right now. Bull Rush. Oh my gosh, we might end up just kind of overpowering him at the end here, or Hold Guard is the other card that I have to choose from. Now, another cool advantage that I have with the Defend card here, which is always awesome, is this Battle Horn, which says you draw an extra card at the start of your turn if your sequence ends with a Courage opening, and it does. So I actually get another card on top of this to add into my pile, which gives me Powerful Attacks. Now I have a ton of options to finish this guy off. All right, so I think I've got myself figured out in terms of what I want to use here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Final Blow, which is going to give me a nice linkage there. I got no problem being able to link it there on the aggression or even on the courage. and that's going to give me +2. So at this point I'm at 4. I need 5 to kill him, and I'm going to use my amazing XP card that I picked up earlier called Bull Rush, which just gives me a crazy amount of damage as I go in there and just hammer him into the ground at this point for a total of 6 damage, which is far and away enough to take him out. Again, these particular abilities at the bottom of the card aren't going to trigger because I always check the value of my cards first to see whether I defeat it before it gets to activate or have any attack back using its combat table. So because I did the 6 damage, this thing has been smashed into the ground. The Vagabond is definitely dead. So now we're going to go ahead and gain all of our loot that we get for this. So I get 1 XP, which is nice because now I'm up to 3 experience, which is where I was trying to get in order to maybe bump up one of my attributes at some point. I also gain a wealth, which bumps me up to 3. So that's fantastic, getting more and more wealthy as we go along. And I go to the item deck and find a craftable item. Now, how this works essentially is you'll have your item deck like this. You're literally going to go through the cards from the top of the deck until you find an item that has the word craftable. I literally pull the top card and it's a C. This one says improvised armor. This is amazing because I don't have any armor yet, so it has a keyword armor, and you can only have like 1 armor, 1 weapon, 1 ally, and I think there's one other one that I'm forgetting off the top of my head that I don't have yet, but at some point we might run into it. This one says reduce wounds from all attacks by 1, cannot reduce to 0. So that's going to be huge when it comes to battling bigger and nastier monsters that are probably more advanced than what we would see in a gray deck. Like, we haven't seen the purple deck yet. I believe the purple deck has some pretty nasty monsters in there, and I wouldn't be surprised the blue deck has some pretty interesting ones as well as some diplomacy stuff. So anyway, long story short, we got armor, and that's fantastic. So this Vagabond, we just basically took the armor straight off of his body, and that actually worked out perfect and made that all the more worthwhile. So this is amazing. It looks like we really are going to be able to be the hero. So not only are we carrying a wounded bow maiden with us, but we managed to hide her in a bush long enough to be able to take down this Vagabond that showed up out of nowhere, defeat him, crush him with a hammer, steal his armor, and now we're carrying her even further towards the island asylum. So I'd say we're doing pretty good right now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to spend another energy as well as an additional energy, so 2 energy, bring us down to the lowest point that we can be to still be able to rest and get all of our energy back and not be exhausted. And that will take us from the Charred Conclave into the Island Asylum. And this is where things are fun because I don't want to waste any time, because if I don't get her here and if I don't exhaust myself by spending an energy in order to do a particular explore action here to find out whether we gain anything, then when this day passes on, the dial turns, it goes to 0, and she passes away. I don't want that to happen, so we're going to go ahead, because my character cares about the reward way too much because he's a very greasy individual. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to do an, he's not going to do a location action, he's going to do an explore action. We're going to flip this card over and jump into the journal. So we'll remove the hero off the map. We're going to go ahead and flip the card over. We've seen the backside of this before, so I'm not going to read it again, but I will jump into the journal itself. We're going to find out what happens. Now take a close look at the card, guys. The first time we came here, we read this introduction and we jumped straight into the journal because we didn't have the tracker status or the red sign card. But this time, we actually walked away from the Hunter's Grove where we came with the Bow Maiden, and boom, we do have the tracker status now, so we do get to move to verse 8 and progress this side of the story. So moving to verse number 8, it says if you have the red sign card, go to verse 9. We don't have that one, so we're going to skip that. If we have the tracker status and a dial, which we do, representing the Bow Maiden attached to a character, go to verse 11. That's where we're going. The other one says if you have the tracker status and no dial, meaning the Bow Maiden passed away because you were not fast enough, then go back to the location card and make another choice. So in other words, you failed, nice try. But we passed, we got her there in time. So we're moving to verse 11. The first thing literally it says in verse 11 is secret. So that's awesome. It says add the number of this verse to the location number of this location, then go to the appropriate verse in the Book of Secrets. So this card, the Island Asylum, is 109 and the secret verse is 11, so that is 120. So we're going to go to the Book of Secrets, which is at the back of the journal, and find out what 120 has in store for us. The bow maiden reluctantly thanks you and hands you a small parting gift. Well, I guess she should reluctantly, thank me because I tossed and threw her around while I was fighting off a whole bunch of other guys, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to her, and I also probably mentioned to her that I was just doing it for the reward, so I can understand why she's not so happy with me, but she should be happy that she survived. It says here, gain 1 experience, so that's good. We're going to be jumping up from 3 to 4 experience, and secret card number 17. Haha, we do get something cool. From now on, whenever you draw a bow maiden encounter, you may discard it and continue the game. Exploration ends. So essentially, because we helped the bow maiden, all bow maidens that we ever run into going forward are literally just going to smile and nod at us and walk away. That's really cool. I like that. I mean, hopefully that comes in handy at the right time. That'll be the fun part, is whether or not we see a bow maiden ever. But if it does happen, it will be extremely cool and really tie into the narrative, which would be awesome. So let's go check out what secret card we just picked up. Okay, this makes sense. So basically the special card, the secret card, is a reminder that when we draw a bow maiden card, we're going to discard it. It says, carved out of the Stagfather's bone, it shows you're one of his adherents. So that's pretty cool. So she basically gave us something that the other bow maidens are going to recognize this charm, and when they see it, they're going to leave us alone, which is kind of cool. So very thematic. So we're going to take that item, we're going to add this to our inventory gladly, because I'm hoping at some point that's going to come around to help us out. And we're going to continue on heading back north, heading towards the 4 Dweller Mounds and likely maybe the Warrior Fair, as well as igniting that other Menhir. But don't worry, I would never forget about the 1 point of experience that we also gained from that encounter, bringing us to a total of 4. So let's head back to our character and find out what else we can do for this particular day. Now, the other thing to make mention of here is that I haven't expended the energy that we needed to expend in order to do that particular explore action. I'm noticing that now, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to tick ourselves down from the kind of safe zone into the exhausted zone, because it did cost us 1 energy to explore that particular location. We were super close to being able to keep it without having to do that, but remember, we do still have the mead, so technically we could spend 1 more, we might as well, 1 more energy and do something else this day before we call it quits. So we'll flip this card right back around to its regular position on the map, and we'll bring our character back into play. With the last point of energy remaining, honestly, the best thing for us to do is to just head north right back to the Charred Conclave, because if I move into that location on the same day that I already drew a gray encounter, I don't have to encounter another gray encounter. So basically that'll just speed things up on the next day of me getting back north and being productive. I don't think I want to do anything with the healing rites, because I don't want to pay an energy and well to gain 2 health when I only have 1 health worth, or 1 wound. I'm going to be able to rest that back up anyway when the day ends, because I'll be drinking my mead to avoid any kind of nastiness from the exhaustion that I feel. So that's a whole ball of wax right there that I'll take care of in terms of managing my character. But what we're going to do now is spend that last bit of energy we have to basically pushing us into complete exhaustion to get us to go from now the island of Cylon to the Charred Conclave. And of course, we're not carrying anyone anymore, so it doesn't cost us any extra energy. We also don't draw an encounter because we've already done it, and it says right below there, once per day. You can only have that happen to you once per day. And we're going to consider that this is the end of our day and it's time to rest. So just before our character heads to bed, he's going to take his mead and he's going to discard it. He's going to drink the entire thing, pass out sideways, down on the floor, most likely, instead of actually landing in the bed. And he is going to use that card in order to basically negate the negative effects of exhaustion. So his normal recovery for a sleep will go all the way up to full, and then +1, thanks to the fact he's got that ability card that always says receive 1 extra energy and stuff like that. So that's always a nice bonus for him. So he's at full energy, plus he's going to go ahead here and he's going to pay 1 food so that he can actually eat. Of course, his actual health is going to go back to full, which is great. His terror would go down by 1, but it's already at the lowest it can be, so there's nothing else I can do there. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to think about spending some experience points. One attribute that I really wanted to bump up for my character is practicality. And the reason is I have a number of combat cards that actually use double practicality points in order to connect their keys together. So I think that'd be useful. Plus, I've already had encounters in the game world where it's actually asked me to roll and then add my practicality to it. So it's actually, I've run into situations where having 2 practicality could actually make a lot of sense. Now, I did have somebody in the last video say, why don't you focus on spirituality? But I looked through my cards and my character just, he doesn't have any. He's an aggressive, barbaric, low empathy, obviously doesn't care about spirituality, I guess, as well, and is more just practical. And maybe that's to his own detriment, but basically, maybe that's kind of where I should be focusing him, because that's essentially where he's already going. There's nothing wrong with going ahead and starting to branch out into other things, because technically he can use those other abilities as well. But I'm just noticing that practicality is something that's come up a couple times so far and might come up some more in the future. It might not be a bad idea to have it. And of course, I can't gain an ability card in it until I actually get it to at least 2, and then the third one I get in that slot will give me another ability card. So I kind of want to go that route to see if I can get a really cool practical ability at some point. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to spend a number of XP based on the 2 adjoining attributes. So in this case, there's already one here. So to get a second one in between these 2, I have to spend 2 XP. So 2 of my XP is going to go away, which is actually a pretty low cost for the most part. And I'm going to go ahead and put one of those into the practicality route. So boom, we've got ourselves 2 practicality now. And the other cool thing is I still have 2 experience, so later on I'm only just 1 experience point away from pushing this one up and getting another ability card that we can add in on practicability, and hopefully that will actually boost him going into some more scenarios and maybe give us a cool ability. So that's it. We have now finished the phase of going ahead and spending our XP to the point that I want to, and we're going to move into a dream in the Charred Conclave. In your dream, you flee from a rolling wave of darkness that slowly consumes the land behind you. You try to pick your paths carefully, making sure to gather ample provisions along the way and to rekindle any menhirs you find. After a while, the wave catches up with you and swallows you whole. You come back to the start of the dream. This time you flee as fast as your legs can carry you, but hunger, dead ends, and the beasts of this land quickly end your life. You are back at the start again, looking hopelessly at the approaching darkness. Is there no hope? And again, we've read this dream before, but because we're doing the dream, I just thought I'd reread it. We've actually had a dream in this location before, and there is only one for this particular location. So this one is now complete, and we can move into a brand new day. So our Menhir statue is definitely starting to get very, very, very dim. And we're going to be ticking this dial down right now. So now we absolutely have a much bigger focus in terms of gameplay. Our dial for this last remaining Menhir is down to 1. And there's only 1 more day before this thing goes out. So this is the day we need to ignite the other Menhir, either in the Whiting location or in the Four Dweller Mound. Those are the only 2 locations on the board currently that we can ignite another Menhir. So this is going to be a priority going into this day. Our event for the day is Full Moon. Whenever you should draw a purple encounter, draw 2 and pick the one with the higher value. Oh, that's not good. Whenever you should draw a green or gray encounter, draw a purple encounter instead. Oh. Cost of activating any Menhirs is lowered by 2 magic. Oh, that's actually really good. And ancient powers grow in strength. So that's a little bit of a weird balance there. It's kind of like I guess, and I haven't encountered a purple encounter yet in this playthrough, so I haven't shown you guys what that can entail, but essentially purples can be nasty, but it's also kind of a bonus to have the magic cost be reduced because I only have 1 magic. So the cool thing is all I needed was 1 magic to actually get I have all the resources that I need in order to get a Menhir ignited in Whiting. I don't know what I need to get a Menhir ignited in the Four Dweller Mounds yet, because I haven't actually explored that area. So that's the fun part too. I could end up traveling all the way to the Four Dweller Mounds, find out that the cost is different or higher, and be in big trouble. So I might have to just settle for Whiting and go from there, because Whiting still has 2 other locations around it with numerical keys that'll open up the second that we get this other Menhir in here. So hey, this could be the day. Maybe we got a full moon for a reason, so maybe something good's gonna happen. I hope. So we're gonna go ahead here, starting off our day, and we have 2 locations where we can actually have a statue relit so that we can continue our adventure, because our current Menhir here that's sitting on our farmhold location is going to go out as of the end of this current day. So what I was thinking of was 2 things. One, we can go to Whiting. We know exactly what we need there. We are basically going to spend an energy just to move up there. There is a settlement icon on here, so the only downside is we would have to go ahead and pull a blue encounter card and see whether or not it's something we need to deal with. Typically, these types of situations can result in diplomacy situations, which would be good, because I could actually show you guys how diplomacy works for the first time, which would be really cool. So we'll probably go that route for not only the reason of efficient energy spending, but also guaranteeing that we know we can actually ignite another Menhir there, because we know the requirements are 3 energy, 1 wealth, 1 magic, and 1 hit of health in order to get that statue up. Granted, we still have to get past the blue encounter, whatever that may be. And hopefully that doesn't sap our energy either. So that's more of the safe path, which is basically just heading up north here. Or the other option is to be a little more dangerous and head over to the farmhold. We can't go to the warrior fair and go up to the 4-dweller because there's no arrow. You can see there's no arrow there linking these 2 together. So there's mountains or some kind of range in there that we can't get through. So we'd have to go to the farmhold, then up to the Hunter's Grove, and then all the way over here to the 4-dweller mounds. And then at that point, we'd have to hope that whatever requirements for the Menhir are there, that they're very low in energy, because at that point we would burn a bunch of energy. So that's not really the smart approach. I'm not going to risk it, because it could be an end game scenario right there. I'd rather instead head to Whiting and do what I know I can do, and hopefully be able to do. And the cool thing is we get to check out diplomacy at the same time if the cards land that way, because there are chances that we can actually get a diplomacy card like we did before, where we actually have nothing happen, or a blue encounter card, sorry, where we actually end up having no diplomacy or nothing actually happening. It's just a typical day. So let's go ahead and spend our first energy here, dropping us from +1 down to full. We're going to head from the Charred Conclave over to Whiting, and the second we walk in there, because of the settlement icon, we pull a blue encounter card. All right, look at this. So we obviously didn't get lucky this time moving into Whiting. We've got ourselves an encounter here we're going to have to deal with called False Accusations. So it sounds as bad as it looks. Basically, we have a card here that we now have to do diplomacy with. And just so you guys are aware of this, my character is really bad at diplomacy. And the reason for that, just at a high level, essentially is that diplomacy focuses mainly on empathy, caution, and spirituality, which you can see with the vulnerabilities right here across these keys that we need to match up. I don't have any empathy, so I can't even use the top key. The middle key is caution. It requires 2 to even begin starting your sequence, and I only have 1 point in caution. It's the only one that I have, is that I'm just slightly cautious, even though I'm very aggressive and have tons of courage and practicality. In spirituality, I have 0 in as well. So this is actually really kind of ironic and sad for me, because I've walked into a situation where the actual flavor text in the card states an outsider is always a good scapegoat. So I've literally walked into a situation where the town folk have pointed a finger at me because I've walked in, I'm a fresh face, and they've blamed me for something that I didn't even do. So that's essentially the story behind that. Who knows what we're actually being blamed for, but it's bad news when we are not very good at communicating our thoughts in order to get out of these types of situations, because this is likely going to end up in just straight up violence in order to save myself. So how this is going to pan out will be cool, because I'll be able to show you a little bit about the entire diplomacy, interaction essentially, and how it can actually even turn into combat, because I can tell you just by looking at the card, it's going to. As you can see at the very bottom of the card there, it has your failure and success, and so I'm looking at that failure going, it's likely going down that road because I can't even progress. I can't even try to convince the mob, so we're going to end up drawing an angry mob, a card that's eventually going to be a gray encounter, which we'll have to fight, and at that point we'll be in our kind of our safe zone, the area that we love, which is crushing people with hammers, because that's what we're really good at. The problem is we have to get through the crowd, and we still have to fail at convincing the crowd just to get to the mob to the point where they're angry enough to come after us. And then at that point, we're going to be able to fight. But we're going to lose some health in the process. So you can see this card set up much differently, but then very much the same as combat. So on the far right, vulnerabilities, they're there in combat. On the left, you have this track. Essentially, this track doesn't exist on any combat card. It's very unique for diplomacy, but basically it's a track of success or failure. So essentially, you have a couple positions going up, a couple positions going down, and your point is to get to the top or bottom of that track, depending on what you're attempting to do. So for me, if I was successful at going ahead and getting through this diplomacy, I would start with a resource marker here, and my goal is to kind of progress up the track, trying to be successful and try to get off of it. So if I can get all the way up to the top, boom, I am successful. If I end up going down to the bottom, I fail. So you'll see at the very top of the card there, it's got flavor text, the title. Underneath that, it has an avoid area. So first off, right off the bat, you can avoid these. Just like running away or fleeing combat, if you don't think you can win, which is something that I'm looking at going, yeah, I don't think I can win this, you can literally just say, I want to try to avoid it. And that's the first thing you can do. You'll also notice on this card it has an or, which is between the avoid section and the first stage of this diplomacy card. So it's basically saying you can do either one of these. For me, in order to do the avoid, I need to actually have 3 reputation. I only have 2 reputation. So maybe when I passed through the farmhold earlier and thought about getting that extra reputation and decided not to, that was a bad decision, because if I had got it, I could have tried to avoid this. I would have just suffered a wound, and I would have just suffered some other costs, and then just moved on. I would have got a little scared from the crowd, but that's it. But because I don't have that, I can't even avoid these guys. They're on me, and they want to know, or they want to continue trying to ream me over the coals for something I didn't do. So I'm going to have to move into this first stage of this diplomacy card, and you note that by using another marker as to which one you either choose or are forced into. In my case, so in this situation, the very first stage of the diplomacy card is just that we're going to be trying to calm the crowd. That's our only goal, is to just calm the crowd. So I'm going to go into this looking for any item cards that I might have in order to try to boost this, and I don't have anything that I can use during diplomacy in order to boost up anything to do with my affinity. So again, you might find later on followers that will boost that. You might find magic items, things like that that may come into play, but currently I don't have anything that's going to help me in diplomacy, so we're going into this one with not much hope. So we know the stage that we're going to start in, which is stage number 1. You'll also notice that there's a stage 2, and you might be saying, well, how does that work? Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to try to get our affinity track, which is the track on the left, all the way to the top. Once it reaches the top, we're successful at the first stage. We then reset it to the neutral position and go through it again. In the second stage, we'll move the cube down to the area there that has the 2 that says prove your innocence at that point. And again, you're going to try to prove your innocence. So the first one is just calming them down. The next one's proving innocence. And both of those are going to be extremely tough based on my character's layout. And I'm likely going to fail, as I mentioned. But it's cool because I still get to show you guys how this works. So what we're going to do is we're going to start it off, and you can see even inside of each of them, the first stage says when it activates on its turn, it's going to hit me for a damage, it's going to counter my first card of the sequence, and it's also going to has that arrow pointing down, which means it will automatically push this thing down 1 towards failure. And again, so basically after 3 full turns, this will go off of the card or off the affinity track, and it'll be considered a fail. And at that point, we look at the bottom of the card and we trigger the draw angry mob gray encounter card, which is likely what's going to happen. The only thing that's brutal about this, we have to go through 3 full rounds, even if I can't do anything off the start here, because I don't have any ability to avoid, and I don't have the keys to even start a sequence. So I think we're just going to go through 3 turns of getting beat up by the crowd. Okay, so as normal, we're going to go ahead and draw up our 3 cards. Of course, it's coming from the diplomacy deck now, so it'll be this blue deck that we have specifically for our character. So the very first card we've got is this one right here, which is called Empathize. And it also has an affinity key on it, which matches one of the attributes that I have, which is empathy. So what's going to happen here, essentially, instead of values like in combat, that's what you're trying to gain is value. There was some discrepancy early on where there was an incorrect mindset where it was the number of cards in your sequence that was the value, and that's incorrect. The actual, for combat, the actual value that it's calculating is based on the number on your card that's inside of that shield or crest icon, essentially. So in this particular case for diplomacy, we're talking about affinities, and these affinity keys basically are going to help move the affinity track. So the more of these points you can get, the higher up the track you go, knowing full well that if you're not putting any of them out, you're in trouble. So this is one that has to do with empathy. The reason that it's specific to an attribute is because if you take a look at this card here, sometimes it calls for anything. So right here in stage 1, it says any, and then it says calm the crowd, meaning that any affinity key can be used of any kind. So that's great because the first one's super easy, but then you'll notice the second one says you have to go ahead and use affinities that line up with caution, which would sound amazing because I have a point of caution as that attribute, but the problem is that it isn't a 2, so I can't even, like I said before, I can't even start off a sequence. So we're probably just going to go through a bunch of failures here, but I wanted to kind of show you the cards for diplomacy so you get familiar with the differences, but honestly they follow a very similar vein to combat. So once you learn one, you very much learn the other. The affinity track is really the special thing about diplomacy that makes it different, and the fact it can be in stages, which I think is really cool. So you can go through a whole bunch of stuff. The other thing here is we get other cards like this. So you'll get a card that says all, for instance. So this means literally every infinity key. It just works for everything. It's the most powerful card you can have come out of your diplomacy deck in terms of trying to match up to any infinity that you need, affinity that you need. So that's the coolest thing, is that you can just drop this thing down. It also has a really cool ability here that says you could toss a dial and get some bonuses, or things can change based on that flip, which is a risk. So we obviously can't even start a sequence, so we're automatically going to fail at this point. So what's going to happen is we're going to go to calm the crowd. The opponent is going to hit us for 1, so our health is going to go down from full to 7, which is not fun. And then they're going to go ahead and counter our first card, but we never played a card because we cannot. And then they're going to go ahead and drop the diplomacy down 1, so now it's down to here. So we're going to go now and we're going to discard these cards. Now normally, just like combat, you can keep a card if you wanted to. So I could be like, oh, I want to keep the all because that's super powerful. Doesn't matter because I'm not going to win this anyway. But then you go ahead and you draw 3 cards up again and do the exact same thing. So here's a couple more cards to take a look at for diplomacy and the differences and things like that. This is really just for you guys to see. Now we might get to a situation in the future here with our character where we can actually use these cards and win a diplomacy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus maybe my next experience point on bumping up caution, let's say, or empathy or spirituality. Even though my character may not be empathetic to start, it doesn't mean you want to just not focus in those, because as you can see, this can really hurt you in diplomacy situations. So again, same situation, I can't start anything off. So basically at the end of the day, this is going to trigger again. I'm going to take another wound going down to 6. And then of course this is going to drop to the lowest level here. And then we're going to lose my cards. I'm going to draw another 3. I'll show you guys what those look like. I'll keep 1 again. We got another all. Got another card here. And here's my other one. And then we're going to sadly lose this one as well because I can't start it off. So I've realized I have a major weakness in the diplomacy side of things. And at this point in time, it doesn't matter what I have for cards. We're just going back here. We're going to get hit for another wound. So basically, we took 3 full wounds, which is probably the most wounds we've taken ever in this entire playthrough. The crowd beat us up really good. And then on top of it here, we now have dropped this thing to complete failure. So when that happens, it says draw the angry mob gray encounter instead. And now we're going to move into a combat. So now at least our character is so mad and angry after being pushed around, beaten up a little bit, and trying to convince people that he's innocent. He's now just going to start swinging that hammer. Okay, so this is not going to be easy. Look at this card, 14. We need to get a sequence of 14 to kill this thing. That is crazy. That is the highest card I've ever seen in this game so far, even in my off-camera playthroughs. That's ridiculous. So first off, yes, this is our strong spot, but 14 is a lot, and I got a feeling we are going to be taking some serious wounds through this. I really hope we survive. This could be very, very dangerous. So what's basically happened is we got a crazy mob now that literally just wants to kill us. So we walked in, things didn't pan out for it. We got accused. We tried to explain ourselves. It got them worse off, got them madder at us. And now they're just coming at us with pitchforks and flame, like, fire and everything else under the sun. And it's like basically just this giant group of people. it says, with the world coming to an end, it doesn't take much to rile people against strangers. So I basically walking in saying like, hey guys, I can light this thing and I can save us all. And they probably think that I'm coming in to burn their entire village down. I don't know what it was they accused me of in the first place, but they really don't want me there. So even though I'm trying to help everybody, apparently they want to kill me. And so you can see this is a guardian. So this card being that has a G in the top left corner. If I do not kill this thing, it will go out onto the board and it will roam around, causing me all kinds of grief. The other thing it says here is this opportunist. It's an opportunist. So it says if you have less than 1 caution, receive +1 wounds with each attack. Whoa, that's really bad. If you have less than 1. Okay, well, I have 1, so I'm good. My character started with caution, thank goodness, because otherwise the amount of wounds I'd be taking right now would be insane. And that's the only thing I really have on the diplomacy side of my board for attributes. So we get to avoid that bonus they have, thank goodness. But we still have to make 14 out of our sequence, and if we win this, we're going to gain 3 XP, 2 wealth, and I believe that's 2 food. So I guess food is good too. But I mean, we still have to win this. But this is going to be a seriously epic battle. So I'm going to be going into this particular battle. Thank goodness I've got the improvised armor I can put on to reduce wounds from all attacks by 1. Can't reduce to 0 though. So I don't know, it's not one of those cards that can be, it's not overly powerful, but it's powerful enough. It's going to help me when we start getting hit for higher values of damage. I'm definitely going to bring in my axe here, which is going to help us. It's going to only give 1 to the value of the sequence, but believe me, that's huge when you're trying to get 14. We're going to try to remember our best, at least I'm going to try to remember the battle horn, which we'll be using every single time we end our sequence off with a courage. That'll be huge. The rest of them don't apply. So the rest of them are not going to give us anything. Their other ones I have are just secret cards that are more for the story. So guys, without further ado, let's find out if we can take down this angry mob. All right, so let's head into this battle. Let's cross our fingers that this thing pans out. So the first card we're getting out is Hold Guard. Okay, so this is a card that says ignore the next enemy attack and drop after the attack. So that's actually really good. That's huge. If I can get that linked into my sequence, they won't even be able to attack on the first attack of the game for them. So that's huge. That's going to be a big plus for us going into the first round. Second card here is Bull Rush. That's always nice. Hey, look at that. It's going to start off our chain, so we got something that works. We don't have 2 courage, but we do have 2 aggression, which is the very top key vulnerability there. And so we're going to definitely use that to start that out. It'll give us 2 off the hop plus our hammer, which is 3. That's not a bad start. Next card is Gather Strength. This one doesn't have any value, but it's uncounterable, and it drops if the enemy deals 2 or more damage in the next attack. So that could be a problem, because if we put that in the middle of our sequence somewhere and it happens to be countered, the enemy happens to do 2 damage to us at some point, especially later on when we're at 9 to 11, like it hits us for 3, we block 1 with our armor, so the 2 gets through. This card would drop from our sequence, and if it happens to be in the middle somewhere, what can happen with that is, if that card drops, it's okay. It just means everything after it to the right is no longer active, including all the abilities. And if we cannot link that in any other way, we might be forced to lose those cards if we need to continue on. So that's kind of where that gets a little dangerous. So those are the 3 cards I have to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and try to build out a sequence that makes the most sense for the first round. So I think I came up with a pretty good plan here, guys, because I have 2 cards that allow me to skip the enemy attack, and I can actually make this work for 2 turns in a row. So I'm not going to play all of my cards, even though I could technically based on the sequence I've got going here, but I'm going to keep 1 and hold it in my hand so that I can block 2 enemy attacks, which will really give me some time to build up, hopefully more. So first off, we're going to start with Bull Rush. So that's going to be the one that's going to begin our chain here, or sequence, I should say. So this is going to link up with this card. I do have the attributes for that. So Bull Rush is going with 2 for a value, plus our hammer is 3. And it says right on it, skip the next enemy attack. So automatically we'll gain that ability. That's awesome. The next one I want to use is I don't want to use Hold Guard, because this one is the same ability basically as the other one. It says ignore the next enemy attack, drop it after the attack. I want to hold on to this card and carry that into the next round so that I can block another attack. That would make the most sense. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this one here called Gather Strength, because first off, it's uncounterable. That he can't, like, this other enemy here, when it tries to counter me, it cannot remove this particular card. And it says on its card here in the combat table, it says if we're between 1 and 4 damage, which we likely will be in this first one here with just a total of 3, that we're going to take a wound and then we're going to counter the last one. But I have uncounterable, so I won't drop that card. Plus, it actually leaves us open to use doubles here or singles, whatever we want to go that route. And both of those things are cards I have quite a bit of. Plus, we're ending with a courage on the end, which means we'll be able to gain an additional card because of our battle horn in the next round. And I'm also holding this card off so I can use this as a another chance to stop the attack going later on. So we wrap around now. I'm done. We're going to go ahead with the Angry Mob. The Angry Mob doesn't get to attack, which is fantastic. So we come right back around to my turn. I'm going to draw 3 more cards, plus 1 for the wonderful battle horn. So, off the top here, we have Final Blow. That's a good card, but is kind of a problem. Well, it's not, I guess it's not too bad. It's a double on the other side, which makes it tough to get out there. I'll show you guys the ability as well. I'll just pile them in the middle here, and then we'll go from there. Outsmart. So this one would help us. This is the one we saw before that would help us out if we're fighting a green encounter, but this is pretty good as it opens up a whole bunch of other keys, so that's nice. Heroic Strike. This one looks amazing, although it sucks a little bit of our energy away. If played when the enemy value is higher than the number of cards in your sequence, mark this card and raise its value by 1. Cool. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's going to make that one more powerful, so that's actually not a bad card. So those are the 3, and then I have one more, which is Careful Attack. This one says, if last in the sequence when the enemy attacks, choose the attack instead of counting your total value. Interesting. So we've got a number of cards here we can go through, so let's figure out how we're going to build out this sequence. You guys have no idea how close I was to be able to get past this Angry Mob in the easiest possible way. And how that would have worked, if it could have worked, would have been trying to get a card out that basically says if it lasts in sequence, or if this card is last in sequence, when the enemy attacks, choose his attack instead of counting your total value. So in other words, don't worry about your total value. Literally pick the attack it does against you in the combat table. What would have been amazing is I could have picked Run Away, where they would literally just run away, but the only thing they do is they'd steal one of my reputation, and that's it. And I wouldn't even have to deal with fighting them. They'd just leave me alone, beat me up a little bit, and stuff like that. I take a knock for reputation, but I don't have to hope that I don't get murdered by this Angry Mob. That would have been perfect, except for the fact you'll notice I can't tie this one in any way. Now, you might be thinking there's a card that I drew that I can use to tie it in somehow. No, can't even do that either. From what I've got here, I've got one card, I should say, that can tie in, but it has the best and most ironic ability ever, which says right here, this is the only way that this would work, but look at this. The first ability that says here is ignore the next enemy attack and drop after the attack. So if we're ignoring the attack, I can't use the attack to my advantage to change it to running away, which is hilarious because I thought I had a chance to get out of this, but I don't. So I can't do that. So the only 2 options that I have now is, and again, I can always try to flee. You don't need to have cards to, you don't have to force your enemy to run away in the combat table. I can flee too, but I might as well just stick around a little bit longer and see how long I can kind of deal with this. So what I'm probably going to do is, I really don't like the cards that I pulled for the most part. None of them jive together at all. But the only one that makes sense to play right off the top here, and I can hold on to one afterwards too, is probably Hold Guard, because then at least I just know I'm not going to get attacked. And it also opens up a whole ton of different cards that I can use, which is amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... and it'll stay in place too, because it says ignore the next enemy attack and drop after the attack. So it'll just disappear anyway. And we'll be right back to Gather Strength. But I can keep one of the cards that I picked up. And the one that I like the most, I think, is the Heroic Strike, because it's a really good one for courage. It opens up some bigger hits that I can do. Plus, it actually goes up to a value of 3 because of where I'm at in my sequence being so low and under the 14 value that the Angry Mob is. I do lose an energy to do that, but this card gets a counter, which gives it a 3. So I'd like to hold on to this one. I'm going to turf the other one, especially Final Blow, because I'm not anywhere near throwing my last attack yet, so I don't need to have that card there. And we are going to stop right there. So I'm holding the Heroic Strike. The enemy does not get to attack, and I have to drop this particular attack, or particular card. So Hold Guard is now discarded, and we start over. And again, I have Courage open, so I gain the ability to draw 4 cards. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those 4. and let's see what we get from the deck. Hopefully it's better this time. So this card here is attack. This one says play this card at the end of your turn, or sorry, playing this card ends your turn. And we get a preparation on here that actually the next time around will give us an extra card. So that's cool. We have Bloodthirsty Rage. So receive damage if countered. That's kind of a problem. So what we don't want that card to be the last in our sequence, essentially, because the mob typically knocks off the last one. The next card I got is Battle Chant. So this one, at least it has courage as well as some magic. So I do have the ability to use magic at some point, but I only have 1 point of magic, and I need it to put up the Menhirs, so I really want to avoid doing that. The other one here I have is Attack, and it says, again, playing the card ends your turn. So those really aren't that great either, to be honest. This is going to be a tough decision. Do I want to go ahead and just run with this or mulligan it? No, I think I'll keep these cards and we'll go with it. So I'm going to actually play Bloodthirsty Rage. So I can connect this in again because it has the plus, which means I can use either a single or double. So I'm using it for its double on the aggression, and I do have that open for attributes. So we're going to now get, it says here we're going to lose an energy. So I'm going to drop my energy down from full down to 5. And that's what I'm really scared of, is that energy drop. We got to make sure that we don't drop so much in energy that I can't ignite the Menhir. So I do still have 3 more spots of energy before we get into exhaustion, and then 2 after that. And we need 3 to actually ignite the Menhir. So I really, really don't want to get into a situation where I don't have enough energy for that this day, or we're going to be in big trouble. So at that point, I probably would flee the combat if I got into a dicey situation like that. So we're putting Bloodthirsty Rage down. The other card I'm going to put down is the Attack card. So this one's going to add some more damage to things. So this one actually has a preparation token that goes on it, so I don't get to draw the card until the next round, and then I'll be able to gain that ability. So this also ends my turn. I had another attack to use, which I can't use because I'm ending my turn. A Battle Chant, which I'm not going to bother using. I'm going to hold on to my Heroic Strike because it's such a powerful card at 3 that'll really add into the attack for later. This last one's likely going to get countered anyway, so I'll probably lose it. I probably won't gain that ability that I really want anyway, but it is what it is. So now at this point, we're going to calculate our combat because it matters, because the enemy will actually be attacking its back. So, and the good news is I put a card here so that this one doesn't get countered, so I don't get wounds. That's another reason why I wanted to, block in that Bloodthirsty Rage and make sure it's earlier in the sequence. So right now I have a total of 2, plus 1 for my hammers, 3, plus Bloodthirsty Rage is 6, and then 7 on the attack. So 7 now. So on the combat thing, it says here, take 2 damage. So we don't take 2, we only take 1, thanks to our improvised armor, which is going to block 1, but never reduces it to 0. So our health is going to drop down to 4. Yikes. This is scary. And it's going to counter the last card that we have. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to counter this particular card, so it's now gone. So we've lost that one and the ability to get that card. And now we're going to go ahead with the card that we kept, the Heroic Strike. I'm going to draw up. And do we have Courage on the end anymore? We do not. So I only get 3 cards this time around. So let's take a look and see what we get. So we got ourselves Faint. This is an uncounterable card. That's always good to have. If the enemy tries to counter this card, mark it. It becomes 2. So I want that at the end for sure. We also have Defend. This is a bad time to get that card. Playing this card ends your turn. It gives us -2 from attacks if lost in sequence. So that's great. We can avoid wounds. And then we got another Final Blow card. So we've seen that I think that's the second one that's come through, but that one I don't know how we're going to use. That was not the greatest draw either, but we'll see what we can pull off with this. Okay, so I've decided to go ahead and defend. I know it's not that exciting, but the good news with this is that we'll stop damage from hitting us, and we also open up a bunch of other things we can do. So it's worth it for me. I can't work off of, or I'm having a hard time working off just the one, so this will open up some options going into the next round. I do have a bunch of cards here that I could choose. I still really like the Heroic Strike, so I'm going to still hold on to it because I think at some point getting that 3 out there, and I still have decent options on the other end, especially Courage, that I want to keep those. So the other 2 will go away. We're going to come back over here. We're going to initiate the enemy's turn now, but I have the ability to block 2 damage. We're currently at the exact same damage amount, I believe. We're still between 5 and 8, so let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, and... let's see. No, I think we're good. Yeah, we're still in that range, so that works out. So we are still in the take 2 damage and counter last. So the counter last would be this one here. So boom, we lose the defense. So that's the thing too. I shouldn't have mentioned the fact that it opens up the other keys if it gets countered. So I just basically delayed things a little bit longer. So we'll go ahead, we'll draw again. I don't get the additional benefit of the horn. You can see here, this is actually quite difficult to get the sequence going here. So what I pulled was surprise attack, which won't help us because we still need an aggression key to get going on this. Intimidate. And, oh my gosh, we didn't get a single one that has anything we can use. That is not good. We might need to either mulligan this. We might get to a certain situation here where we might just have to take a hit in order to run away. Well, guys, the time has come. I think I have to just kind of put my tail between my legs and run away. I think this angry mob is way too aggressive, and it's going to take me way too long to get up to 14. It's also very tricky. I've already gone through 3 rounds here, and I don't want to burn any more energy. We have a greater responsibility to get another Menhir lit, and for me to sit here pounding away at a bunch of individuals hoping to survive the massacre is likely not going to work out in our favor. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to flee. Yeah, I know, I didn't think I was going to say that, but we actually are going to run away because I don't want to hurt. I've already lost half of my health, which is a decent chunk to lose. We're down to 4, so that's not that great. Full health is 8 basically, so yeah, we're halfway. So what happens when you decide to flee is you lose a point of energy, so that's kind of sad as well. So we drop our energy down 1 more, so now we're going to be at 4, which means in order to get the Menhir lit, we're going to need to definitely exhaust ourselves. But, you know, we still have the ability to go ahead and do that, thankfully. The next thing that happens is we receive 1 attack from the enemy. So what ends up happening is we still get hit on our way out. And again, it's all based on whatever your value currently is. So my value right now is still 3, 2, and so it's still 6. We still get hit for 2, but I do have my armor, so we only get hit for 1. So now we're down to 3 health. So you can see, like, it actually took quite a bit out of us. And you know what, to be totally honest, I could have bailed earlier. But I wanted to see what it would be like to play through a number of rounds and see how far we could build it. You can see once you get to about the 6, 7, 8 mark, putting cards in to connect becomes much more difficult, and likely we need to go into the advanced combat cards and getting those into our deck to try to help us in joining up that sequence for larger attacks, because the base cards seem to kind of give you a little bit of trouble, it seems, once you get to around that much damage. But we'll see. I mean, I didn't go through the whole deck or anything, so it's just kind of what I'm seeing. So the other thing is we just paid the energy cost. We would normally, if we couldn't pay the energy cost, we would take 2 attacks instead. But thankfully we could pay the energy cost, so we don't have to do that. So that's it. That is the end of this encounter with the angry mob, who absolutely had a field day with us and beat us up real good. So after that battle, this is where we currently sit. We have, you can see our life has taken a massive beating down to 3. We really need to heal. Our energy levels are way low, and we actually avoided getting any fear from them. There was actually a fear at the very beginning of the mob situation where if we actually had decided to do a little bit less damage at the beginning, the mob would have basically just begun to scare us. But that we jumped past that fairly quickly, and we stuck more so in the damage area for the most of it. But that's going to be it. That is that encounter. It definitely took its toll on our character, but now we're going to move on with trying to get this Menhir lit. So let's go ahead and activate a Menhir. So you can see right here on the reference card it says free, but may be used only in locations with the icon, which we do have one, thankfully. We find all the specific rules on the back of the location card, but we've seen this before because we explored that area, or in the exploration journal. So basically you don't need to explore in order to light or relight a Menhir. You can actually just go ahead as a free action and check out the requirements for it, and then go ahead and pay those requirements in order to do it. So we're going to go ahead and activate one so that we can ensure our playthrough can continue. So as you can see here on the card, it says in order to activate the Menhir, we need to pay 3 energy, 1 health, which is sad because we took so much health hits against the angry mob, 1 magic, and then 1 wealth per player. And we can place a new statue and set its dial to 7. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead here. We're going to pay ourselves 3 worth of energy. So 1, 2, 3, putting us into exhaustion, sadly. We might as well just use the other point of exhaustion for something else, or the other point of energy, I should say. We're going to lose 1 health, dropping our health even closer to death, which is not good. Way down the track. We're going to go ahead. We're going to pay a wealth. We're going to go ahead and pay a magic. And there we go. We have paid the cost, and now another Menhir in the land has been lit. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for, we have successfully lit another Menhir in the land. So we'll take the dial, set it to 7. We're going to place it just like that. Get our new statue set up, and just like that, we now have 2 statues. And of course, at the end of this round, we're going to lose the other one as it's going to go dark. So by doing this, a couple cool things happen. First off, we've progressed the ongoing story, which comes from right here, the ongoing events pile just above it. So we're going to read that, find out what happens next, because we've lit and successfully progressed the story. But we also, because we're currently in whiting and we now have the statue lit, we now essentially have pushed back the fog of war, and we now can reveal location 114, which is just north of us from whiting. So we've successfully completed the new task, which said enable a Menhir in the whiting or 4-dweller mounds. When completed, draw a card from the bottom of the events deck and resolve it immediately, and we're going to do that right now. Congratulations, you've completed chapter 1. So every player is going to gain an experience. I'm going to grab one of those tokens and put it in. So we now have 3 experience to spend, which is perfect. So we can maybe bump up some type of character trait or attribute, that helps us with diplomacy. It says, if you wish to stop your game now, follow the saving the game section of the rulebook. We can talk about that later. And this one says, otherwise, take the chapter 2 start card, event card out of the box and follow its instructions. Hint, each chapter of the game takes around 30 to 60 minutes for a group of new players. So what we'll do is we'll finish out our day and then we'll move into that whole other section here. So first off, we got to talk about the fact that we have a location that's also going to reveal itself. I am very excited to see what this new location has for us. So this one here is called Tangleroot, and we're going to be drawing a green encounter when we actually enter this location for the very first time. So we place that right there so we can go visit that later. It says, for many years, travelers worked to turn this overgrown gorge into a trail. Despite their efforts, it is still a confusing maze. Interesting. So you can see here we can only go north or we can head west from this particular side. So we can't go any further east, it seems. But we do have a new location that we can go check out, which is very interesting. And of course, our Menhir also being in this location will allow us to reveal this one right here too, which is cool. So we'll have to go over there and explore to see what is over there. But first, we have one more point of energy that we could spend if we want to. Seeing as we are already exhausted, it might make sense to do so. So let's take a look at how we could use that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to end my day here. The main reason is because we're in whiting, and yes, I could use an energy to head up to Tanglewood. It might actually not be the worst thing ever, except for the fact that we have to draw a green encounter card, and we're very, very beat up currently. And I'm a little worried that if we move in there, pull a green encounter card, and it's something actually nasty, we could be in some serious trouble. So for me right now, it's not worth the risk. So I'm going to choose to basically end my day right now. All right, so here comes the end of the day. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 food in order to eat. Good thing. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to gain a health, and we're going to lose one of our fear. We don't have any terror or fear, so that's going to stay where it's at. Now the thing that's crazy about this is because we pushed ourselves into exhaustion to light the Menhir, which we needed to do, we aren't going to be able to gain a health. The reason for that is because of festering wounds. It says we lose a health when resting, when we're hungry or exhausted, and we were exhausted, so the health we would gain is negated. Wonderful. So we get to stay at 2. But hey guys, at least we were able to progress to the point of being able to give ourselves some extra time, which is really important. And this is a perfect example of one of those times where you need to push yourself into exhaustion in order to complete a story event within a given time frame. So we had to do it, and we are happy with that decision, but no health gain for us. The next thing we can do is we can go ahead now and we can restore as much of our energy as we possibly can, but it's basically limited by our health. As you can see, there's limiters there that are saying we can have no more than 3 energy. So going into this next day, we have a really pathetic 3 energy because we're so beat up and hurt that we don't have the energy to really get around the game board. So the first day is going to be quite a waste. And unless we focus on some healing, whether we head down to the island asylum to heal up or do something else that could help us healing wise, we are going to be on a very slow path to getting our health back. So that might become a priority for us going into the next one. So that is now done. the next thing we're going to do is we're going to spend our XP, and this is where things get fun because I really want to focus on something from spirituality, caution, or empathy so that I can unlock the ability to become a little more productive during diplomacy encounters. So now I'm going to go ahead and do something you guys probably weren't expecting, and that's going to be I'm going to upgrade my empathy. And you might be wondering, why would you do that with a character that has no empathy? Well, maybe because most of you guys wanted me to bring the Bow Maiden back and have her healed up, that he actually became a little empathetic. And he actually has increased that. So that's really cool. So at least thematically anyway, or in terms of the story, that could make sense. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to spend our 3 experience because we're trying to put a 3rd experience point in in between the 2 different attributes that connect together. So as of right now, there's 2 over here. So to put 1 over here would be, the next tick up would be 3. So we got to pay 3 experience. So that's all gone. And we can now place one of these cubes inside of this particular area, meaning that when we go into diplomacy now, we have empathy, and that's going to unlock the ability to start using those cards. So now we have caution and empathy, which is fantastic because it's finally going to give us something a little bit more useful when we go through diplomacy encounters. So that is it for spending of experience. All right, so we're going to end our day off the way we always do, and that's with a dream. Even though we've been at this location before and read this, I'm going to read it again because we are technically having our dream. The dream says, your dream of home is understandable considering for the first time in your life, you've wandered so far from it, but why is everyone talking and walking backwards? That is going to do it, guys. That is the completion of chapter number 1, and this is where things get interesting. There's definitely a crossroads here, and we can go in one of 2 different directions. The first direction is to continue the playthrough into chapter 2. So the only hesitation I have with this is spoilers. The first chapter is a very good overview of all the different actions and different things you'll see and need to see in order to understand how the game works. When we progress into chapter 2, my only concern would be spoilers. So going into chapter 2, if there is a drive to see more content from the game, you guys would like to see chapter 2 and how it pans out, and you're willing to be okay with the spoilers that come with it, I will definitely be labeling everything in chapter 2 with a spoiler tag to let people know that, to avoid if you're concerned about that type of thing. But chapter 1 was wide open, so I really wanted to show you guys that there's no holds barred, kind of like I did with 7th Continent back in the day as well. So what we're going to do is I do have, and this is going to be extremely tempting for all of you, I'm sure, the actual pile of cards for Chapter 2 right here. Now, I have nothing further beyond that, because at that point you're talking like you're getting deep into the story and whatnot. So I don't have anything else besides that, only Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. So we have to stop at the end of Chapter 2 because I don't have any more content to go with. But that would be quite a playthrough to get to the end of that one as well. So I'm throwing this back to you guys, and I need your feedback in the comments below. Do you want to see more, or are you happy to have things end right here and let's move on to something different? That is going to be something I'm going to leave up to you guys, because I want to figure out where the majority sits on that particular one. So again, if we go forward with Chapter 2, I will be labeling everything with major spoiler tags going forward, but if we don't do it, we move on to a different game altogether. Either way, whether we just stop right here or we continue the second chapter, I really hope these videos help you make an informed decision on whether or not you want to pick up the Tainted Grail, which is currently still on Kickstarter if you're interested. And I have had a lot of fun with it, and it's one of those games that's has driven me to want to come back to the table and find out what happens next. It's very much got that drive to it, where you just keep playing it and you keep wanting to see what's going to happen next. So that is a huge plus. It's a really good sign, because there's not a lot of board games that get me excited to come back to them as much as this one does. So that's saying something huge. So again, it's up to you guys. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for your support. If I happen to make any mistakes during this, let me know in the comments below. Of course, it's still in its pre-Kickstarter prototype form, so rules and things like that may change. But I do appreciate all of the support on these videos. You guys have been amazing, and we'll leave it up to you guys as to whether or not we continue our adventure or call it an end. Thank you so much, and as always, keep on rolling solo.